Welcome to This Explainer. Let's dive right into the roots of American liberty. Have you ever wondered how a brand new society actually figures out how to, run itself? It doesn't just happen by magic. Today, we're going to unpack the ultimate historical instruction manuals that laid the groundwork for American freedom and see exactly how English political traditions traveled across the ocean to build a foundation for the liberty we're still talking about today.
To really get this, imagine you're playing a game with your friends. Could be basketball, could be a video game, whatever you're into. Now picture a referee who can just change the rules at any given second. You hit a clutch three-pointer, and suddenly they announce, actually, that's only worth 1 point now. Incredibly frustrating, right? That desperate need for a shield against arbitrary, unpredictable power, that is exactly what the early colonists felt, and it sets up everything we're about to cover.
So let's jump into Section 1, the Ultimate Instruction Manual.
To prevent that kind of referee chaos, the colonists needed concrete rules. Enter the Colonial Charter. Now, this was an official document straight from the English crown. Yes, it granted permission to settle, but far more importantly, it outlined very specific local powers. The colonists absolutely did not view these as just simple permission slips. No way. They treated them as literal legal shields and step-by-step instruction manuals for building a community where the rules of the game couldn't just be changed on a whim.
Because look, there is a massive difference between arbitrary rule and the rule of law. Under arbitrary rule, it's all about sudden changes. Elections, canceled, just because the leader feels like it that morning. It's the referee changing the rules mid-game. But under the rule of law, you have regular, predictable procedures and consistent common law. And the absolute most crucial thing here is that even the leaders, the people at the very top, have to follow the exact same rules as everyone else.
Moving right along to Section 2, the rule of law.
Okay, so what did this actually look like on, say, a random Tuesday in a 17th century colony? Well, charters granted real, tangible powers. They gave colonists the right to elect their own councils and establish their own courts. This meant if you had a property dispute with your neighbor, it was settled by laws you actually helped shape, not by the mood swings of a distant king. The charters specified exactly who could vote, they set incredibly strict schedules for when assemblies would meet, and they demanded that laws be recorded in writing. This gave local communities the actual legal standing to govern themselves efficiently.
But think about this for a second. If a charter guarantees you a trial by a jury of your peers and ensures your assembly meets regularly, where do you think these ideas actually came from? Did the colonists just invent them out of thin air the second they stepped off the boat?
The answer is a resounding no. They brought the rule of law and the established rights of Englishmen right across the Atlantic with them. These were deeply, deeply ingrained English political traditions, things like due process and limited government. The colonists took those existing ideas and used them as the bedrock to strengthen their new self-government in America.
Which brings us to Section 3, Procedures Protect Liberty. Now, how exactly do written procedures, literally just rules on a piece of paper, actually create and protect human freedom? I know, talking about schedules and sessions might sound a little dry at first. But really, why does a written schedule for elections actually protect your freedom?
It's simple, but brilliant, because regular procedures prevent arbitrary rule. When a schedule is locked down and legally binding in a charter, a corrupt governor who suddenly realizes he might lose his grip on power can't just wave his hand and say, you know what, let's just skip the election this year. The procedure is the shield. The written schedule is what protects the voice of the people.
And hey, it wasn't just about elections, it was about the courts, too. Consider the common law traditions. Instead of a judge making up a punishment on the spot based on whatever they felt like that morning, common law was carefully built from past court decisions. So similar cases get similar judgments. If someone stole a horse 10 years ago and got a specific penalty, well, stealing a horse today gets the exact same penalty. That kind of unwavering consistency builds immense trust in a community because people know exactly what to expect. Now for Section 4, Defending Traditional Rights.
So what happens when that trust is completely broken? Imagine a scenario where a royal governor comes in and simply ignores the charter. The colonists immediately protest. But here's a really critical question. What are they actually defending? Are they just being rebellious teenagers looking for a fight?
Not at all. They were defending long-standing legal rights and self-governing procedures. They absolutely weren't arguing for something brand new. And they weren't just whining about their personal, everyday preferences. They were standing up to protect the legal practices and rights they had long enjoyed, rights that were legally promised to them in writing.
And how did they protest? They used the very habits they learned from their charters. They drafted formal petitions, they organized official assemblies to discuss the issues publicly, and they hit back where it hurt by enforcing economic boycotts. They used highly structured procedural methods to fight back against arbitrary rule.
Let's look at the bigger picture in Section 5, Protecting the Vulnerable.
Why does a fair society matter beyond just the daily politics? Well, it connects to a much deeper moral worldview. Psalm 82 verse 3 commands, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute." That is a profoundly heavy command.
And this is exactly why all these charters, rules, and laws matter so much. They aren't just old, dusty documents sitting in a museum. Fair rules and protected rights are the literal tools a community uses to fulfill that biblical command. When the rule of law is strong, it acts as a wall that prevents the powerful from crushing the weak. It defends the most vulnerable from harm.
Finally, Section 6, Education and Morality. This brings us to a really crucial philosophical wrap-up. The core philosophy from the Heroesmartacademy Godly Learner series is that education, when intertwined with biblical morality, is essential. Why? Because education without morality will hurt. You can know every single fact about colonial history. You can be a total genius at math. But if you lack a moral compass, all that knowledge can easily be used for harm instead of good.
Which naturally leads to this very real question. What is the point of being smart and supposedly highly educated if you just continue making bad choices that hurt yourself and the people around you? Look at history. Arbitrary, corrupt leaders were often very highly educated, but they lacked morality, and so they became tyrants.
The solution to that internal conflict is found in Romans 8, verses 6 and 7, which promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. When you align your education with a solid moral and spiritual grounding, you don't just gain knowledge, you gain wisdom, and ultimately, you gain peace.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. You are gaining an amazing education. You now understand exactly how the rule of law protects the vulnerable. The question is, will you use your education to help build a fair society? And will you maintain a spiritual, moral mind while doing it? The choice, just like it was for the early colonists, is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it sparked some great curiosity for you today.